Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with thinkorswim. And when we think about thinkorswim, I think most people's idea of thinkorswim is for traders, right? It has a lot of great tools for trading. Actually, no, there are some also potentially very powerful tools for longer-term investors. So today I want to take us through my top 5 powerful tools for long-term investors that are on the thinkorswim desktop platform. So it should be a really interesting discussion. We're going to be taking what I would consider to be a top-down approach, looking at broad potential economic influences on the markets in general, then narrowing it down to a sector and to an individual stock analysis. Should be a lot for just about everybody watching. Before we get to that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody who's already chatting in out there on YouTube. Always great to see the familiar names. Always nice to see anybody that might be here for the first time, but hello there, John and Richard, JDLMI, Scott, Jack, Rojo, Becca, everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We always do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you are among those that are here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the live stream is concluded, enjoy the recording. That's a great way to watch these webcasts. But if you'd like to be here in the live stream, well, this is a Wednesday webcast series, and we kick things off promptly at 2 Eastern time. You're certainly invited to join us here live. And for just as a nice little treat here for our live stream audience members, my very good friend Barb Armstrong is going to be hanging out with us in the chats through the duration of the discussion. She's already been there chatting with some of our attendees, but Barb's just going to be keeping an eye on the chats, and any questions that come in that I can't get to, she's going to pick up the slack there for me. As long as the questions are not too far off topic. But thanks for having my back there, Barb. Barb and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody watching to follow your favorite Schwab presenters on social media. If you want to know where to connect with us when the camera's not on, social media is the answer. You can find and follow Barb and me on X. You can find Barb there at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find and follow me on X at Cameron May CS. And as of just very recently, you can also follow us on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Cameron May CS. Pardon me, but let's get into this discussion, looking at the top 5 thinkorswim tools for a long-term investor. And of course, as we do, regardless of whether we're a trader or an investor, every approach to trading and investing carries risk. At least I have not found one that doesn't have risk associated with it. In any case, bear these important disclosures in mind. All corporate or issuer names and market data shown are for illustrative purposes only and are not a recommendation, offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal, and any investment decision you make in your self-directed account is solely your responsibility. All right, so today it's all about the investor looking to use tools on thinkorswim desktops. So we're going to be going through 5 tools using what I again refer to as a top-down approach. We're going to look at tools that might support an investor's efforts to acquaint themselves with broad influences on the markets in general. Then we're going to look at tools that might supplement the efforts for identifying sector strength or weakness. And finally, how can we locate and evaluate individual stocks for the purposes of investing? Let's go to the thinkorswim platform, start to acquaint ourselves with these tools. All right, so here we are on the platform. And as I mentioned, we're going to start with the broad perspective first. And let's first go to the Analyze tab. And yes, the first few tabs here might be oriented more toward traders. But right here in the middle of the Analyze sub-tabs is something known as economic data. Now, how many of you have used this economic data feature before? A little bit hidden there in the platform, but certainly potentially very powerful. This allows us to track shorter and longer term developments in all kinds of economic criteria, including, let's just look at some of the broad categories: money, banking, and financing, prices like consumer prices, population, employment, and labor market metrics, business activity, and so on. Now, obviously, I'd love to show you every single one of the tools available on this feature, but let's just zoom in on one in particular. As a homeowner, this might be a little bit difficult to look at, but let's look at the house price indexes. So I'm going to click on house price indexes. You can notice there are lots of different house price indexes. Some are very specific to areas or regions of the U.S. marketplace, or we can go to the National Home Price Index. Let's look at the Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index. For homeowners, it's been a great run, but possible signs of weakness recently, and we can see that on a chart. So let's select the Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index. This is going back basically for as long as the index is available or has been available. So this is stretching all the way back here to 1987 and then progressing all the way up to the most recent data available. Now, some of us might not need to see that length of time frame, but just imagine for our investors just trying to get a gauge of general influences on economic strength and how that might be reflected in, let's say, consumer behaviors. Well, home prices have been going up and up and up and up, except for what we might look like just a little bit of a downtick here most recently. We can change the time frame from just the maximum available view. Let's look at this over just a 1-year perspective, and you can see starting in about May, proceeding into June of last year, on a national basis, a little bit of sign of weakness there. Home prices kind of trending downward. Now, is that a guarantee of what is to come? Nope, this could turn, but at least it might allow the investor some insight into what's happening in this corner of the marketplace. And you saw how many other different things could be checked there on that tool. Now, if we've dug in here and we want to zoom back out, we can click on the little home button right there. This is not home as in house, but home as in home on the platform. Sorry for a little bit of pun there. That takes us back to the economic data overview page. Ricebird says you've rarely viewed it. Shay says, how do we populate that tab in our profile? So no need to populate it. It's just there automatically. We just go to the Analyze tab, go to Economic Data. There it is. All right. So that is sort of a broad perspective tool. Let's get a little bit more granular. Let's look at the individual sectors in the marketplace. And for that, we're going to navigate over here to our charts and use our left sidebar Gadgets tool. Now, if you're not familiar with sectors, basically the S&P 500 is chopped up into 11 different categories known as sectors, where we group together stocks or companies with relatively related business profiles. Okay, so let's go over here to our watch list, and thinkorswim actually maintains and publishes a listing of these sectors, and that's listed as as a watch list. So if we don't have a watch list set up here, we can actually choose it as one of the available gadgets. We can choose watch list, but then we can also go specifically to that sector watch list. And thinkorswim refers to it as the S&P 500 sector indices. As long as we're thinking S&P 500 sectors, it'll take us to the right spot. So let's select that. And we're presented now with some kind of obscure looking symbols. That's not uncommon. It's not unique to sectors like this. Lots of stocks have symbols that don't really give away who it is. For example, Salesforce's symbol is CRM. If we want to see exactly which sector is referenced by the symbol, a couple of things that we can do. We can click on the symbol, and as long as we have linked, here's that linking feature right here. As long as we've selected the same number here and here, it links our tool to our chart, and it automatically loads up that sector. And then we can just pick one and then minimize that left column, and we can see, okay, this is the energy sector. If we go to pound 15 or number 15 for the S&P 500 sectors, that's the materials sector. Quick suggestion that I might have for you here is to customize the remaining or the customizable columns here. You can click on the little gear icon and customize right from there. And I'm just going to remove the market price. We might not really care what the market value of an entire sector is, maybe just the general direction of that sector. Let's remove that. Let's also remove the market capitalization, since that doesn't necessarily apply to these sectors. But what we are going to add is the description of the sector. That's just the sector name. So I'm going to choose description, click OK, and then rather handily now, I can see what these sectors are: energy, materials, industrials, consumer discretionary, and so on. And so our investor can now quickly navigate through these and look for sector strength or sector weakness. However, on a 1-year chart, that might be a little bit too short term for our long-term investor. So maybe we switch up our time frame here. Let's go to a 5-week view. And if we were to go down through these, it's been a pretty good run over the last 5 years for most stocks and most sectors, but some in particular that have been pretty strong have been, for example, communication services. You can see that starting after a sell-off in this sector back in ending in October of 2022, there's just been continued strength, and maybe our investor wants to participate in that strength. That's just a hypothetical proposition. Really, what I wanted to do here is introduce that sector tool and show how it might be quickly navigated by that investor. So that gives us a couple of tools to reference: the broad economic perspective, the sector by sector perspective. So that's tool number 2 in our top 5, or at least I'm going to call it my top 5 tools. So obviously not everybody's going to see every tool the same way or rank them with the same priority. But let's go a level deeper now. We've gone broad, we've gone to sector. How about to individual stocks? How might an investor find stocks that they're interested in potentially investing in? How might they evaluate those stocks? There are going to be some complementary tools that might assist with that effort. So let's do that. How about we direct our effort attention to stocks in the communications sector, right? So let's go find a stock. And to find a stock, we'll use our scan tool. And specifically, since we're talking about scans, let's use the stock hacker. Now, I'm going to give you an invitation here because I actually deliver it's a weekly webcast series on Thursdays. Today's Wednesday. On Thursdays, I actually have a webcast series. It's called Investing in Dividend Stocks. So I want to give you since we're talking about investing today, I want to give you an invitation to join me in that webcast series. You can either join the live stream on Thursday, or you can watch the archives. But to do either one of those, first of all, make sure that you have subscribed to our Trader Talks channel on YouTube. So here's the channel name: Trader Talks Schwab Coaching Webcasts. And our YouTube channel is where you can join our live streams, but you can also find our playlists. So if I go to playlists, right up here at the top, Investing in Dividend Stocks, there's that webcast series. I can view the full playlist right here. And I'll do this for those who are here in the live audience. Let me put a link into the chat window for you. It'll just link you straight to that playlist. And for those that are watching on the archive, I'll put the link down in the video description, so you can just pop down below right now, click on that link, and it'll take you right to this page. All right, but that point takes me back here. How about we look for dividend stocks from an investing perspective in that communications sector? I'm just going to build a quick example scan or screen or filter or search, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not going to scan necessarily in all stocks. How about we direct this scan to the S&P 500? Now, within the S&P 500, how about we intersect that with the sector industry, sometimes used interchangeably with the word sector, not truly interchangeable, but it'll work for purposes of this search. We'll go by industry. This is just going to allow us to look at individual industries within a sector. We're not going to do that. Let's instead just go to communication services and just look at all communication services. So we're going to run a scan through communication services companies within the S&P 500. Now let's maybe describe to thinkorswim what our hypothetical dividend income investor might be looking for. And these are just going to be some example criteria. But let's say that our investor, yes, is looking for yield. So let's pop down here to yield. Quick trivia quiz. What's the average yield on an S&P 500 dividend paying company right now? Bonus points. I've said this in recent webcasts, so if you've been listening, you probably know the answer, but it's right around 1.1 to 1.2%. Let's say that our dividend investor here is looking for at least a little bit above average. So how about we put 1.3 in here as a minimum yield? And I'm going to set a maximum up here let's go for 6% as a hypothetical maximum. For some dividend investors, they see very large dividends as potentially unsustainable, and that can introduce volatility they might be trying to avoid. All right. Next up, let's say we're looking for, even in the S&P 500, they're relatively small companies. Let's say that our investor is looking for the larger capitalization companies. And we'll just set, how about we just go with truly large cap? The typical definition of small cap, medium cap, large cap. A small cap company is seen as typically as a $2 billion or smaller company. Between $2 and $10 billion is typically seen as mid or medium cap. And then above 10 billion is large cap. So I'm going to type in 10,000 here. That's because the market capitalization is displayed in millions. So 10,000 million is 10 billion as our minimum. Next up, let's say that our dividend investor isn't really interested in tons of volatility on the stock. They're just trying to collect a dividend payment from one quarter to the next or from 1 month to the next, and they don't necessarily want a big roller coaster ride in between. Well, a gauge of volatility is beta. And a company with a beta score of 1 is seen as sort of an average volatility stock. Less than 1 is less than average. So how about we put in a minimum down here, 0.5. That's 50% less than average volatility as benchmarked against the S&P 500. And then maybe we'll put a maximum of 1.5. So that's 50% higher volatility than average. That might sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, what we're really doing here is sort of zeroing in on sort of average volatility companies. Now, finally, let's add one more filter here, because long-term investors very commonly are interested in what we generically refer to as the fundamental health of the company. They're not looking at the stock necessarily, but the company behind the stock. And there are actually filters for that fundamental motivation that can be added right up here. I'm going to add a fundamental criteria. And how about we just say our dividend investor considers debt to be a potential threat to their ongoing collection of dividends. So let's go down here to long-term debt to capital. Shay says, should there be a max for market cap? Well, there could be if a company, let's say that our investor is more interested in smaller companies, maybe among those large cap, there's large and then there's mega cap, great big companies. And for some investors, there is a line of thinking that the mega caps might be pushing up against an envelope of how much growth they can get. However, we haven't found the top end of that envelope yet. But yeah, we could set a maximum here. I'm not going to in this discussion, but there are those that might subscribe to that line of thinking. So it's a good question. Anyway, let's add a long-term debt to capital requirement. This is just comparing the long-term debt of a company to all of its capital. So sources of capital could include long-term debt plus common stock and preferred stock. So we add all those up, divide it by the amount of debt they carry, and let's just say we don't want to see that number, that debt load, to exceed 50%. All right? So how about we just set, this is okay, we'll just leave the minimum where it is, maximum at 50%. Now this is just an example scan, but to revisit what we're doing here, we're looking for companies paying above average yields for dividends that are large cap stocks with sort of average-ish volatility from below average to a little bit above average. And finally, those that are carrying a maximum of 50% long-term debt to capital, but only within the communication services sector. So let me quickly run a scan, and you'll notice here a few companies. How about we pick on Disney for the rest of our discussion? So Disney's in that communication sector. Let's say that it meets the criteria of our would-be dividend investor, but they just want to learn a little bit more about Disney. Now, I think most of us know a lot about Disney already, right? But there are going to be plenty of times when the investor finds a stock and they say, I don't really know that company. How can I acquaint myself with that before I commit to the long term for that, or to that company? So let's move on to top tool number 4. So number 1 was the economic data. Number 2, the sectors. Number 3 is the stock hacker tool. Number 4 let's learn about this stock using something known as the company profile. Interesting. So I'm going to go to the Trade tab, and let's type in Disney here. And just over here to the right, tucked away in a corner, easy to miss, is something called the company profile. Before I click on that, just give me a quick Y or N. Yes or no, are you familiar with the company profile tool or not? So as I click on that, it's going to bring up this tool, and it's giving me a breakdown of what this company is and where it derives its current market capitalization. That capitalization that we just discussed could be from debt, could be from other sources, but you'll notice right up here at the top of this tool, it's saying percentage of market cap. And for Disney, so Mark says no, JDLMI no, Carla no, a lot of no's, Kevin says yes. So it sounds like most people are not familiar with this tool. Nifty little tool. But you'll notice for Disney, 47% of its market capitalization comes from a business category or a division known as experiences. What in the world are experiences? There's entertainment. Maybe that's what we think of when we think of Disney. 34% of its market capitalization comes from entertainment, or basically its total value. And 19% from its sports division. How does sports enter the equation for Disney? There's a little trivia question for those in attendance. But we can learn more about each of these divisions by clicking on them. Over here to the right, you'll notice it gives us a sort of a forecast in revenue and EBITDA margin for that division. But additionally, we can learn, let me maximize this. Let me click up here. Let me check one other thing here. Let's see. There was one thing I wanted to show you. I think it's a feature. I'm going to have to park that maybe just on another page that I want to display. But in any case, this gives us the sort of the forecast for the growth of that division. So yeah, experiences are theme parks, Ted. That's a large portion of this. Entertainment, movies, sports, ESPN. Exactly right, Scott and Ricebird. All right, so this is the company profile tool. Now, what we need to know is that this is provided by a company named Trefis. That's a division of Insight Guru, and it's a separate but unaffiliated firm. So please read through this important information down at the bottom so you understand where this data is coming from. But this is only a portion. I'm going to throw in a little bit of a bonus here as we try to acquaint ourselves with a company that maybe we haven't encountered before. Obviously, Disney's not a very good exception, not a very good illustration of that. But let's go to the Analyze tab here, and we're going to go down to the Fundamentals area. So as I choose Fundamentals, let's make sure that we have our symbol here. I have this linked, so it automatically brought up Disney, but if it's not linked, you might have to type the symbol in again. And this can tell us quite a bit about that fundamental background of the company. When we talk about the fundamental health, we're talking about performance metrics like earnings and sales. Is the company profitable or not? What have been the trend of those criteria over time? What do the analysts have to say about the company? What are more in-depth descriptions of the individual divisions within that company? So all of that is captured here on the Fundamentals tab. And as I scroll down, let me first of all point out, down here at the very bottom, what do we see? There it is. There's our company profile tool. And what I wanted to show you here, got a little bit ahead of myself, is that if we click on an individual division like experiences, I can come over here to this tab and click on the description for the division. So what is this? What is this experiences division? Well, Disney operates theme parks, ding, 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 Ted, that attract millions of tourists every year. So we can read through that. It describes who the clients of the theme parks are, what are the competitors of those theme parks, what do buyers care about, the strengths and weaknesses of the division, all of that right down here. So we can click through the individual divisions. And I think you can see for an investor who's trying to acquaint themselves with a new company, that could provide some potentially powerful insights. Now let's go up through the rest of this Fundamentals tab just quickly. I obviously can't show you everything in exhaustive detail, but right up here is the company. We can see which sector it belongs to. So if you're ever wondering if you found a company, what's a quick way to find the sector that it's in? Just type that in on the fundamentals page and you'll see right there. Here's what the analysts have to say about it. We can download reports from analysts right there. As we scroll a little bit further down, this can be a very helpful little summary of a company, especially if we're not acquainted with it. It tells us all the corporate contact information right up here. But in this one paragraph, it describes this company. Now, if you were to describe Disney to me, would it sound something like this? The Walt Disney Company operates as an entertainment company in the Americas, in Europe, and in Asia Pacific. It operates 3 segments: entertainment, sports, and experiences. Company produces and distributes film and television content. You can see the depth of the information here to help that investor acquaint themselves with this company. Now, down below are performance metrics. So if we have a value investor, there are going to be value criteria here. If we have a growth investor, there are going to be growth criteria here, and so on. So we can see things like return on equity, earnings per share over time. We can see a 5-year trend and a breakdown by individual year for these different metrics. So as we scroll down through, take the time, look for what's important to you. If fundamental analysis plays a role in the administration of your portfolio. But these valuation highlights are an extension of the data that's provided to us by Trefis. And this can tell us recent potentially important developments for the company. Disney's Q1 fiscal 2026 earnings is summarized right here. Potential upside and downside to the price projections that were provided down below for Trefis. So read through that. There's a lot to learn about an individual stock. If we thought thinkorswim was just for trading, I hope you're seeing that's not at all accurate. All right. So that's kind of 2 tools in one, the company profile tool, but also I wanted to use that as sort of a dovetail to lead into this discussion of our fundamentals tool. Now, that kind of brings me to the final thing that I wanted to talk about. Cool tool number 5, top 5 tool for long-term investors on thinkorswim. And that is the education that's available about this kind of stuff. So you're getting some of that education right now, so you can watch it live, but it's also available on demand. Ricebird, this is good stuff. You've been looking on the website for much of this. Good. I hope this is useful to you. But if we want to learn more about investing, yes, trading, but also investing, we can go to the Education tab. And on that Education tab, we have 2 sub-tabs. There's Education, and then there's Learning Center. They sound like pretty much the same thing. They're not. Education is for learning about investing and trading concepts. The Learning Center is specific to thinkorswim. What is thinkorswim? How do you use it? Navigation of the platform and that kind of thing. So I'm going to go to the Education sub-tab. Of course, it did this to me. Bear with me for just a moment. When I get chatting for a while, it can time me out. So let me get logged back in here. It'll only take a moment. There we go. All right. Now let me bring that back into your line of sight so you can see where we find ourselves. There we are. All right, so on this Education tab, there are a row of sub-tabs right up here at the top. And the one that I want to draw our attention to today for our would-be investor is that Stocks tab. And if we're trying to learn about stock investing, well, we have some resources available to you here, including webcasts like this one. So you can see here's a buying stock webcast that you can access right away. It's called, or it's delivered by Scott Thompson. You can see more webcasts by clicking on View All right here. Or as we scroll down a little bit further, there are also written courses. Some people like to see these tools and resources being demonstrated. Others like to just read through the concepts of investing in a structured way. And that can be done through in particular, probably this course called Stock Trading with Technical Analysis. Pardon me. Nope, not that one. Stock Investing with Fundamental Analysis. There we go. So I'll click on that. You can see that this is organized into courses, into basically chapters, introducing fundamental analysis, principles of value investing, estimating what's called intrinsic value. Down a little bit further, there's a sample value investing plan. Further down, we get into growth investing and so on. So a lot of great resources available to you. A little bit self-serving for me, the educator, to be talking about the educational resources, but I do think it's a top tool for investors on the thinkorswim desktop platform. So guys, with that, I've accomplished what I set out to do today. I wanted to talk through the top 5 resources or tools that are available to that long-term investor on thinkorswim. So as a recap, the economic data tool, the sectors tools, the company profile, plus, so this is kind of a bonus, that fundamentals page, then running the scan, and finally, the educational resources that are available to you. So I hope this has been a helpful discussion. I hope it's been insightful, because I do think there's some a misperception of the capabilities of thinkorswim out there, that it's entirely geared toward traders. Nope, that's not true. Lots of potentially powerful tools for the investor as well. So everybody, thanks for giving me your time today. Barb, thanks for helping out in the chats. I'm going to let you go, but I want to give you a quick reminder that I have other webcasts every day of the week, as long as the markets are open and as long as I'm not on vacation. You can find me in the other webcasts. So do yourselves a favor. If you're new to the channel, make sure that you've subscribed to the Trader Talks channel. So as a quick reminder again, our YouTube channel name is Trader Talks Schwab Coaching Webcasts. You can subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button right down below the video right now. It doesn't take really any time. Just click on it. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but this is where you can join the live streams. You can also find the playlists like the one that I provided earlier. Now, another thing that Barb and I suggest you do is to follow us on social media. You should be following your favorite Schwab presenters on social media, because that's the place to connect with us in between the live streams. When the camera's not on, the place to reach out to us is on X or on LinkedIn. So you can find Barb and me on X. Go to X and find Barb at Barb Armstrong CS, or you can find me on X. Here's my profile. At Cameron May CS is my handle. And you can see I'm very active, 6,500 posts to date. And if you reply to one of my posts, I reply right back to you. So for example, I just made this post today about Oracle. Big pop in the pre-market. Is it going to hold on through the day? And if you reply to that, we just kind of chat back and forth there. Now, I also do that on LinkedIn. So you can just find me on LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/in and then /Cameron May CS. Will take you right to my profile. Give me a follow there. All right, everybody. Thanks for giving me your time today. I am going to let you go enjoy the rest of our educational offerings. We have several webcasts still to come. Go enjoy those. I'll be looking for you in my webcast series. I definitely appreciate those that have already clicked the thumbs up for this webcast. That's always appreciated. Got over 100 people watching, and it looks like 39 have already clicked that thumbs up or that like button. That helps every single time you do it. So if you enjoy one of our webcasts, click that like button. It gives a nice pat on the back to your presenter, but it also gives that video a boost in the YouTube algorithm, helps more people find these discussions. They can learn stuff like tools that are available for investors on thinkorswim. All right, everybody, I'll see you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on social media on X and on LinkedIn. But until the time comes again when I next see you, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy investing. Bye-bye.